You know, like many of you, there are people that are high risk that I know and I care about. My parents are both in their 80s. I've got other relatives in their 70s and 80s. I have friends and family who have other problems that put them in the high risk categories: heart disease, COPD, which is a problem with the lungs, and other lung diseases. I have friends with diabetes. Um, so there are a substantial number of people that I know and care about who are at higher risk, and some of them they're overweight. I mean, and that puts them at higher risk, and some of them have immune problems. And I don't want anything bad to happen to them. I would like very much, I would love it if they would all be okay. Because, well, if you've got feelings when you lose somebody that you love, that can be really, really hard. I speak from personal experience, having lost my wife, having lost my grandparents, and it is really hard to lose someone you care about, to lose somebody you love. Now, some people say it's better to watch somebody die slowly, and some people will say it's better to let them go suddenly. I think you can argue either way, but that's beside the point. The problem is when we focus on the people we care about, we forget about everybody else. Now, that's, if there are lots of different situations that I could give as an example, like a mother who loses a child grieves and forgets about her husband and forgets about her other children and grieves and grieves and grieves, and the grieving goes on for years. That's an example where it's taken to an unhealthy level. And there are a lot of other examples that you could take as well, but I want to zoom out, I guess you could say. When we get emotional, we tend to lose our ability to see things from other perspectives. And while that may sometimes be necessary, it is also something that can be a problem. So let's just take a step back. And when I say a step, I mean a really, really big step. When I look at situations, I try to look at the small scale, the individual scale. But when it's a massive situation like the global pandemic of SARS CoV-2, you can't just look at the small scale, at the micro, at the individuals. You also have to look at overall impact. So the generally assumed reasons given or believed for why we're doing the lockdowns, the shelter in place, and quarantines is because we're trying to reduce the impact on healthcare systems and trying to protect high-risk people. Now, I'm over 50 years old, and I have repeatedly seen that what the government tells you is the motivation isn't really why they're doing it. But I'm not saying that this is that situation. I'm not saying that the government is lying to us, okay? It's a whole nother thing, right? All I'm saying here is that this doesn't just involve high-risk people. It involves virtually everybody in virtually every country. Yes, there are some countries that have gone a different route. Some of them have no choice. They don't have the resources. They don't have a healthcare system. They don't have what's necessary to lock down and shelter in place and all that crap and be able to get through it the way that America and many other countries are doing. And some of them have done it by choice. Like Sweden, for example, decided not to lock down. And guess what? Unsurprisingly, they are close to achieving what scientists unfortunately call herd immunity, which basically means that almost everybody is becoming immune in Sweden. And they haven't seen a huge number of deaths, but I'm fairly certain that they have put into place alternative measures designed to reduce the number of fatalities and otherwise reduce the impact on the healthcare system. So, could we have done it that way? Well, I'm not an expert on this subject, but in my opinion, we should have done it a different way. And here's why. If we look at what we're doing right now, we're helping the healthcare system, we're helping some high-risk people. And yeah, we're flattening the curve. But, what does that really mean? That means that we're extending the duration of the entire problem from mere months to potentially, some experts are now saying, years. For what? And I know what I'm saying is not popular, okay? But I have to look at the sheer number of people who are suffering because we're trying to protect these people that we love. Because we're trying to protect the doctors and nurses. And doctors and nurses, I salute you. I think that what you do is amazing, but you knew from the get-go that what you were getting into was going to expose you to diseases that could kill you. You knew that. And if you didn't know that, you were really, naive. But, I look at, okay, first of all, the infection rate is much higher than what's being stated. Why? Because we don't have all the facts. But I can guarantee you that SARS CoV-2 was in the U.S. and in many other countries long before we thought. So if you think it was February, I'm sorry. I doubt that it was that late. I would imagine December or January is when it got into your country or my country. However, the fatality rate is also not accurate at this time. But if we look at the numbers, it is unlikely that it's as vastly understated as the infection rate. But I'll let the experts figure that out. What I can say is that with great certainty is that there are many consequences to our good intentions of trying to protect the high-risk groups, of trying to help to flatten the curve for all those reasons. That includes greater rates of abuse in the home. It includes greater rates of addiction. It also includes higher rates of suicide and divorce, and other things are going on. There are people who are being rejected for health care. I tried to get to see an appointment to see my doctor. And she said after COVID-19 is done. Great. My son was supposed to have a dental appointment to fill a cavity. It got postponed and rescheduled, and today they called and said, sorry, it's canceled again, and we don't know. We're not going to reschedule because we just don't know when. And he has to have a pain level of 6 to 10 before we'll bring him in. which basically means he's going to, he'd have to have the cavity be there long enough and for him to suffer enough that it would just, you don't want to watch that, right? I don't want my kid to suffer. But it's not about my kid. It's not about me. It's not about the people that I love or the people that you love. It's about everybody. We're affecting negatively everybody. Businesses have shut down permanently because they were never able to get to the point where they could shut down and then pop back up after everything goes back to normal. And hey, what happens if we get back to normal and then we have to lock down again? That's going to knock even more businesses out of the water. So we're destroying businesses, we're destroying people's livelihoods. There are people who cannot go to work because they have little kids at home who can't go to school. And as a result of that, well, families are sinking into poverty. So we're destroying entire populations with poverty, addiction, abuse, suicide, and divorce, and other problems. People are dying because they can't get medical care because of COVID-19 lockdowns, because COVID-19 patients are being prioritized, because their needs are suddenly more important than other people's needs. Does that really make sense? I don't see how it does. That potentially billions of people are suffering so that the high-risk groups can be preserved. This may sound callous. This may sound like I don't care, but I do care. I care enough about everybody else that I have to accept the fact that I will lose people that I love. Because it's selfish, it's immature, and it's unfair not to do that. I know you don't want to hear that. I know you want to believe you're doing the right thing by protecting those high-risk people. But are you doing the right thing when you're throwing everybody else under the bus? Are you doing the right thing when you're causing all kinds of damage in the private lives, in the business lives of many people all over the world? Are we really making the best decision? I don't think so. I think maybe it would have been much smarter if we had said, okay, if you're in a high-risk group, we need to somehow quarantine you, isolate you, or whatever to minimize your personal risk and keep everybody else going. Let the damned virus go through us. Most of the people are going to be fine. Really, it's just what we're doing for this disease when we've had other diseases that were much more dangerous and we didn't do this. It just doesn't make sense. And the Stimulus Act here in the U.S., okay, let me ask you, how many people are going to get by until the lockdowns are done on the $1,200 to whatever that they got from the U.S. government? And how much are they going to really be able to buy if that money that was given out was created instead of being loaned or lended to the U.S. government? If it was just created, if they just printed more money, that devalues the American dollar. And that means you have to spend more to get what you need. And if we're just going to say, well, lock down another month, lock down another month, lock down another month, how many times are we going to get these stimulus supports and then have our expenses increase? I mean, we're already earning less than when I was young. We're already being screwed on our income. Look, I love my parents, I love my aunts and uncles and cousins and everybody else, my friends, all those people who I know who are high risk. I love them. I don't want anything bad to happen to them. But the reality is by protecting them, bad things are happening to a lot of other people out there. I mean, think about all those kids who only feel safe when they're in school. All those kids who only get good nutrition when they're at school. All those kids who are struggling at home because, with or without the help of their parents, remote learning that was not optimally designed, and I can fairly certainly say that what we're getting right now is not optimal. Let alone the kids who aren't getting any education because they live in an area where the schools can't afford to help them get internet and devices in their homes. Those kids are really getting screwed. I mean, my daughter's best friend in the Milwaukee area, school has been done for her because the public school system there cannot afford to give internet and devices to all the students who are living at home right now instead of coming into school. And this is happening all over the country and all over the world. And there are a lot of parents out there who either don't have the time or the patience or the knowledge or the skills or all those things, plus the resources and the money necessary to help their kids at home. And I hear alcohol purchases are way up, which means people are boozing to deal with the stress of their situation, which is not helping. If they're boozing, that means there are more people dipping into drugs too. Not just Valiums, but also the illegal stuff. We're fucking up the world, people. Think about it, please. This has got to change. We cannot continue to do this. This is not a feasible plan. Too many people are suffering just so a minority of high-risk people don't suffer. We need a better plan. No more lockdowns. No more shelter in place. Quarantine only those who need to be quarantined. Protect those who need to be protected. Let everybody else get back to their lives. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry if I've upset you, but I'm really worried about a lot more people than just the ones I love. I hope you'll learn to do that too. Thanks.